news, what it is, where it comes from, why you should be concerned, and what you can do about it. So let's get started. I'm going to start with two quotes, one from Jonathan Swift, one from Samuel Clemens. Now, these two gentlemen lived about 100 years apart, but you can see from these two quotes, this may not be the first time we've had an issue with the truth. And the second quote by Sam Clemens, upon further investigation in the research. So when you look on the internet, that quote is attributed to him every place you look. But you dig a little deeper and you find out that no one can actually prove he ever said it or wrote it. So, welcome to fake news. Fake news has been with us since the beginning of time. Since humans have been communicating, people have been trying to distort the communications within. In the 17th century, Galileo Galilei was accused of heresy for his support of the heliocentric theory of the universe. In 1835, the New York Sun newspaper published The Great Moon Hoax about an alien civilization on the lunar surface. Orson Welles shocked the daylights out of people with his interpretation of War of the Worlds over the radio. And most recently, we've had vaccines tied to autism. So what is fake news? I have a great definition from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It's a form of propaganda created to mislead readers in order to generate views on websites or steer public opinion. It is not true, and it is not going away. As long as we have communication, we'll have people trying to distort the information within that communication. Now, there are types of fake news that I wanted to tell you about, and I have some examples. So the first one I want to talk about here is satire, parody. It's a joke, and it's for strictly entertainment purposes. For this example, you can see I have The Onion. They really do a great job of mimicking the look and tone of serious news sites. So it's difficult to tell that this is satire. As a matter of fact, there was a congressman who forwarded an Onion joke last summer because he didn't realize that it was satire. In this example, you can see John Bolton's being asked to leave the condo board meeting because he wants to nuke the Isaacsons. The next type we have is mistakes or poorly researched stories. This is when someone publishes something without thoroughly vetting the facts or their sources. Last summer, again, you may remember that MSNBC's Lawrence O'Donnell had to retract a story about President Trump's connection to Russian businessmen because his research didn't support his story, and he was going to get sued if he went to air with it. There's also biased and slanted news. This is intentionally written to persuade rather than inform. It may contain factual information. As a matter of fact, the best fake news will contain some snippets of truth, usually taken out of context. But for this one here, we have InfoWars' Alex Jones. He claimed that the Sandy Hook massacre was faked and the victims are crisis actors. He was sued and been told to stop. But in his website, he's angling for the reader to end up with a particular perception. He's trying to sway how you think here. And then we have propaganda. It's composed to deliberately mislead or confuse. In this website here, Biden 2020, which looks like Joe Biden's website, but actually it is not. It was created by Patrick Maudlin. He's a Republican political consultant who's working on getting Trump a second term. And at first glance, you look at this and it looks legitimate. But when you dig in, you see there's awkward quotes, there's awkward pictures of Joe, and it's written to basically discredit Joe Biden. And then in this one, we have clickbait. Now, P.T. Barnum would have loved this stuff. Sensationalized headlines, the kind you read from blocks away. They make you click because it is just so unbelievable and so audacious that you can't help but click on this stuff. This is where you're going to find out where Sharon Osbourne assaulting Simon Cowell. Think National Enquirer, the blocks you can read from Headway. And the reason they do this is because every time you click, they make money. So why does it matter? Why does fake news matter? What's the big deal about people embellishing stories or stretching the truth online? Well, if it were simply a question of Uncle Glenn posting a few inflated comments to his Facebook, about a fishing trip last spring, then no, it doesn't make any difference at all. However, when those seemingly innocuous comments are being posted by fake accounts created by folks working from an intelligence agency, then we do need to be concerned, because their agenda is to create a divide, to cause chaos and confusion. They can be overt and they can be tremendously subtle. A little bit of history, a little bit of background on fake news. So throughout history, intelligence agencies have spied on allies as well as enemies. Various methods have been employed to collect and distort information. One method, disinformation, it's a typical spycraft trade, and it's when information is deliberately distorted and then leaked into the communication process in order to deceive or manipulate. This is damaging because democracies depend on accurate information to function effectively. By flooding the world with disinformation, the lines between what's real and what's fake become blurred, and that undermines confidence in our institutions and our processes. So without reliable information, democracies struggle. For example, according to the United States intelligence community, the Internet Research Agency, or IRA, a division of the Russian intelligence community, worked diligently to influence the results of the 2016 presidential election. They embarked on a campaign of disinformation using social media to change the perception of reality, reducing people's confidence in news and news agencies, as well as other legitimate institutions. So their method: create many, many fake social media accounts, find a hot button issue, and exploit the different perspectives, creating a larger gap. Basically, they post things to get people arguing. Now, please keep in mind, presidential elections are full of hot button issues. Our candidates talk about them. Their perspectives on the issues is what makes us vote for them. And the United States intelligence community warns us that the intelligence agencies of several countries are poised to interfere with the 2020 presidential election. The ubiquity, anonymity, and immediacy of the internet, coupled with few regulations and no editorial standards, make it very easy to produce and share information online, whether that information is real or fake. So I have a few stats that I'd like to share with you. According to a 2018 Pew Research Center report, over half of US adults get their news from websites or social media. A 2016 BuzzFeed news analysis found that in the final 3 months of the 2016 presidential campaign, the top performing fake election news stories on Facebook generated more engagement than the top stories from major news outlets such as New York Times, Washington Post, or NBC News. And in 2018, a study conducted by faculty at Princeton and New York University found that the average American Facebook user aged 65 or older posted 7 times as many articles from fake news websites as adults 29 and younger. That was true regardless of ideology, education level, or political affiliation. But it's not just us older folks. In 2016, a study at Stanford's Graduate School of Education had researchers following middle school, high school, and college students in 12 states as they evaluated information presented in tweets, comments, and online articles. More than 7,800 student responses were collected. And from that research, they found that most middle school students can't tell ads from articles. Many high school students couldn't tell a real news source from a fake news source on Facebook. Most college students didn't suspect potential bias in a tweet from an activist group, and most Stanford students couldn't identify the difference between a mainstream and a fringe source. So folks, everyone is susceptible. Now, if you're getting your news from online searches or social media, I want to tell you about two phenomena: filter bubbles and echo chambers. When you search online, you're tracked. Search engines see what you're doing. Oh, sorry about that. Search engines see what you're doing, and they see where you've been, what you're looking for, and they want to be helpful. So the algorithm considers what you've been looking at, determines that you want something similar. So this may save the shopper some time, but for news and information about the world, it would tend to homogenize the results. And this is exactly why when you're shopping for jackets online, then you go to your Facebook account afterwards and you see in the ads on the side and the little banners on the side stuff for down jackets. This is, they know, because it's they're looking at how you've been searching. So if you want alternative viewpoints, this may not be the best approach if you're just getting stuff from online and you're not checking any place else. You can be getting homogenized results. So filter bubbles and echo chambers limit the opportunity for different perspectives because you're caught in that loop, and that can strengthen the acceptance of fake news. So what are we doing about fake news? We see here Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, testifying before Congress, and he didn't look very comfortable that day. Social media companies appear to benefit from gossip, arguments, and drama as it attracts more users, which translates to more income for them. Their primary focus is to avoid regulation of their companies. They don't want people telling them what they can do. And they spend a lot of money on lobbyists, and they contribute heavily to political campaigns to prevent that from happening. And by the way, I just wanted to let you know, Facebook, their policy says that they'll identify political content, but they will not parse or remove for inaccuracies. And this includes paid political advertisements. And our government doesn't appear to be doing much to staunch the flow of fake news. If the congressional hearings with the social media CEOs was any indicator, then our legislators may not have the level of knowledge or understanding or even power to implement effective regulations. And if legislators get up to speed, the tech company lobbyists will do their best to prevent the legislation from being too regulatory. In other countries, they're attempting legislation to check fake news, the flow of it, but critics say regulations will simply suppress open communication. Countries with open communication, example, democracies, have a tougher time at staunching fake news as opposed to countries with tighter regulations. Think a dictatorship, it's easier for them because they're in control of everything. And just recently, Singapore actually required Facebook to use their own policies and identify something Singapore had determined to be fake. And it was a couple of days back and forth, but they got them to do it. So knowing all of that, what is our best defense against fake news? We need to raise our information literacy quotient. I'm going to leave it on the slide for just a little bit. So what is information literacy? From the American Library Association, information literacy is a set of abilities requiring individuals to recognize when information is needed and to have the ability to locate, evaluate, and use that information effectively. It's a mouthful. It's a mouthful. But basically, information literacy includes search skills. It includes critical thinking. It also includes ethics, how we behave around copyright and security. Information literacy is something that can be taught within the context of any discipline. And there are teachers who are teaching it within their curriculum right now, K-12 education, because we are in a digital age. And the more we know about these four pillars, the better searchers, the better consumers of information we're going to become. Now, there are a few things you can do to help identify fake news. Before you share, slow down. Read the article, read the whole thing. I know that first paragraph has just ticked something emotionally into it, and you want to send it out to Uncle Glenn as quickly as you can, but read the whole article. And then also figure out who wrote this thing. We'll go through all these steps right here. So slow down, first of all. Check to see if the information is current. The internet is a wonderful place for the resurgence and recirculation of old ideas as well as new concepts. You see this example I have here about student loans and Congress, being exempt from them. This old Chrome keeps making its way back onto the web, and you just have to make sure we're talking about current issues. Make sure it's not a joke. Make sure it's not satire. It's not funny. Again, the representative last summer who forwarded the story from The Onion, not realizing it was a satire site. Make sure you don't do that. In this one, we have Jay Inslee dropping out of the presidential race and turning into a majestic oak, but he will be back. The other thing to look at is domain names. You see this abcnews.com. Now, abcnews.com by itself, is a reliable news source. But when you do the .co, that's typically an extension associated with the country of Colombia. A few years ago, it started being hijacked to add as an extension onto these sites. So it looked like our trusted news resource, but it really isn't. So look at those URLs carefully. And then about us. This is my favorite way of sort of vetting a resource. You look at who is writing, who's publishing this information, and it's typically at the top. You can see something that will say about us. You click on that and it tells you who it is and why we're writing this stuff. Or you scroll all the way down to the bottom and you can find something about us. Now, if the website that you're looking at has nothing about who the owners are or what their mission is or anything like that, that's information. Pay attention to that. There's no reason why they wouldn't put on there who they are unless they're trying to hide it, typically. So look at the About Us. That's a great place to go. And then sensationalized headlines. So outrageous, so unbelievable, so over the top, you just have to click. These images, graphics, they don't always match the headlines. In this example, you see that we have Meghan and Harry want to quit the royal family. Now, this is a great example of how information can trick all of us. Because when I was first doing the research for this presentation, I started this about 1.5 years ago. When I was digging around, the only websites, the only resources that were carrying the information about Meghan and Harry were stuff like the tabloids, National Enquirer. And I typically dismiss those when they're talking about stuff like this because it's usually clickbait. As it turns out, Meghan and Harry did want out of the royal family. So I was duped because I didn't trust the resource. And hey, so none of us are immune from this at all. Next, look at the images. Image alteration is so easy to do nowadays. It's tough to tell the fake from the real. So in this, we have 2 examples of Emma Gonzalez. She survived the February 2018 Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida, and became a proponent for gun control. She started traveling and speaking. Now, the photo on the right-hand side, you can see her tearing up a range target. Well, someone didn't like that, so they photoshopped the Constitution and substituted in there for the range target to make it look like she's saying something other than what she's actually trying to say. So be aware of that sort of manipulation. It's pretty easy to do. The other thing you can do is you can just do a general web search on the topic and see what other news sites are reporting. In Google Chrome, when you do a search, if you'll see up here right at the top, there's a thing called right on news. Click on the news tab and do the search in there, and it brings up major news sources, and you just go down through and see what they're talking. If it's legitimate, they should all be saying something similar. Yes, some guys will have unique or exclusive content, but most should be saying something similar about the topic. And then how does it fit with what I know? Check it against my own belief system. I mean, we've all lived a while. We're readers. We're consumers of information. We have our own internal database. Match it against that. Trust your instincts. Look at that. That's another way to sort of check and balance this as well. And then, of course, you can ask an expert. You can call the library, email us, come see us. Of course, you can't come see us right now in this time, but in a more normal sort of existence, that would be an option. We studied these issues when we got our degrees. We have expertise. We love to connect and share with the communities that we serve. So let us help you. Don't people constantly, they call the library and say, oh, I don't want to bother you, but you're not. This is what they pay us to do, and we love to connect with our community. keep in mind the viral nature of something on the internet is not always a good thing. Okay, just keep that in the back of your mind. And please remember, political content is the perfect breeding ground for fake news. Lots of hot button issues with people invested in their political allegiances. Folks react emotionally, they share quickly, and that increases polarization. Pay close attention to political content, especially around election times. And lastly, if you find that you shared incorrect information, please admit the mistake and share the correct information. The newspapers do it, magazines do it, TVs do it, TV does it. We should do it as well. And now let's go to the toolbox. I'm going to give you a handful of sites that you can go to be able to, you see something on Facebook, you see something posted on the internet, somebody shares something with you. There'll be several sites here. You can go and check on these sites to check the authoritativeness of this particular topic. So the first one I have is Snopes. They are usually the first to have information for the conscientious truth seeker. It's a nonprofit. They have a great group of folks, and they've been around for a while. You type your query into the box. Snopes will tell you whether it's true, whether it's not true, and then it'll also tell you if there's factual information in there, even if the statement's false. PolitiFact.com from the Tampa Bay Times. It's an independent Florida newspaper, and one of the things I love is the Truthometer. It's pretty cool. OpenSecrets.org. It's for the Center for Responsive Politics. Nonprofit, they're nonpartisan. This is a great resource if you're looking for how money is spent in politics in this country. FactCheck.org from the Annenberg Public Policy Center at the University of Pennsylvania. Journalists and information scientists monitor the accuracy of statements made in and about U.S. politics. It's a great site. And then, of course, krl.org. In the upper right, you'll see the word contact. There's a drop-down arrow. You click on that, you go to chat. That'll take you to a link to Question Point. And that's where you can email a question to a network of librarians, and they'll respond to you. And KRL librarians are part of that network. And then if you're searching in Google Chrome, if you're using Google Chrome, and you see a photo in there and you want to know more about it, if you right-click on the photo, a pop-up menu comes up and you click on Search Google for Image. It will bring you all the instances of that image that Google can find, and you just take your time going through them. So again, I have a photo of Emma Gonzalez from Stoneman Douglas. You can see on the right-hand side, she's got a Beatles t-shirt on as she's talking to the press. But someone didn't think that was enough, so they put a message on her shirt over here on the left and changed the photo. Oops, let's see here. And that's all I have for now. Ready for questions. If you have any for me, I'd be happy to answer them. You're muted, Janet. There you go.
If you anybody have a question, we have two options. You can unmute yourself, or on the top right-hand corner, there's a little quote box. You could write your question in the quote box to John.
And if you don't want to ask me the question here, you can email me on my email account. Hang on just a second. I'll put that back up if I get the right there. My name is spelled unconventionally. But if you email me, I'd be happy to respond to you.
Yes, this is Richard Herzog. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Richard, yes.
In the direction that you started with regards to and what the abilities are going to be because of the enhanced abilities to manipulate the pictures we see, the words coming out of people's mouths, I think it's scary to think about how more extreme this is going to be able to become. When I look at, let's say, a picture of, let's say, Benjamin Franklin taken from a dollar bill, and I see him talking and saying all kinds of things, that's really an indication of where we're going to go, especially when you can compare it against what we've become used to with regards to our science fiction movies and that sort of thing. Have you any comments about that to share with us?
Richard, you make an excellent, excellent point. The technology today is making it so easy to manipulate both video, audio. There's an excellent version of, it's a female actress, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, but Steve Buscemi is the voice that's coming out of her mouth. And all they need is a quick scan of a video of you talking, saying a handful of words, and they can make that happen for folks who are for folks who are still who have the skill set to be able to use that software. So yeah, it makes it doubly hard to tell what you can rely on. So we really bounce it off each other too. That's another way to do it, is ask each other, because some of us have better research skills than others, and we want to help out wherever we can. But yeah, that's a good question, Richard.